At the box office this weekend, Disney's Frozen moved up a spot to #1.
It's completely frozen.
Cold, 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 cold.
A real howler in July, yeah?
In its third week, the animated flick raked in $31.6 million, taking the top spot from the Hunger Games sequel. That movie slipped to second this weekend after 2 weeks at #1, grossing $27 million.
They haven't been able to find your brother. The people up in those hills have their own breed of justice.
And Out of the Furnace, starring Christian Bale, follows an older brother who takes justice into his own hands when he tries to find his younger brother. The dramatic thriller took third in its opening weekend, making $5.3 million. Now, Jason Gorber from twitchfilm.com joins us, as always. Jason, good to see you. It's you're not in that box.
I know, it's weird. They got me out of the box. It's all good.
Okay, so going to be an intense focus this week on Nelson Mandela.
Of course.
Of course, a movie that I believe it debuted at the Toronto International Film Festival. Did you get a chance to see it?
I unfortunately didn't get a chance to see it. It's almost comical how many times I've tried to see this film and something has come up or the screenings were canceled. They actually made a bunch of changes just before TIFF to the film, so they actually canceled some of the press screenings. It stars Idris Elba, who's an exceptional actor.
He's very good.
Phenomenal actor, and if you see the trailers, you really get a sense of that he's completely embodying the man, particularly in terms of mannerisms and the voice, all of that stuff. Now, again, I can't speak to the film, I haven't seen it, but I do know that critical opinion is certainly mixed on this film. The issue is, and the story is no doubt that you've been doing since his passing, and obviously before Mandela, he was an incredibly complex guy. And if we simply focus on particular things that you're pulling out, any film, any dramatic film like this is going to have challenges in actually telling this kind of story. There's certain films that have done it very well. Gandhi did a pretty good job at doing it. Spike Lee's Malcolm X did a fairly exceptional job at taking somebody who's a very polarizing figure and showing him sort of in a more mainstream light. So Mandela, I think, in particular, given that for many people he was considered a terrorist, for others now, we consider him absolutely a peacemaker, this dynamic doesn't necessarily play through in a fictional film. Sometimes documentaries just are the better ways to tell this kind of more complicated story.
Considering the week that was and the week that's coming up, would this film get a lot more attention now from groups like the Academy Awards because of the nature of the topic?
Yeah, it seems callous to say, but I mean the actual UK premiere was taking place with members of the royal family and Mandela's family in the screening. He passed during the screening. They actually had an announcement as the credits closed. They canceled the big party that they had afterwards. And obviously when you have entertainment stories, which are obviously very frivolous, matching with a global event like this, things get done. All of a sudden Idris Elba, much more so even than Chiwetel Ejiofor from 12 Years a Slave, is suddenly being positioned as one of the front runners in the Oscar race. There are people immediately tweeted afterwards like, oh my God, Mandela is dead, so therefore this film has import. And I
not necessarily so, right?
I like to put a break on that, not only because of the I love Oscars and I love this race, but the frivolity of that compared to the actual passing of a giant like Mandela, we shouldn't tie those two things together. But there are things that cinema can teach us about a character like Mandela. Film, documentary, and fiction film can do exceptional things to try to give nuance to a character like this. There's one documentary very briefly called Under African Skies, which is about the making of the Graceland album, Paul Simon. And what's beautiful about that doc is that it talks about the cultural blockade on South Africa and how Paul Simon broke that blockade, but definitely took the spirit of Mandela, that through cooperation, through the elevation of culture, you could see South Africans not as a political statement, but as a people. Their music, by being shown to an international community, actually did more for that than, say, Sun City, which was the artists against apartheid that were denying going to South Africa. You had an artist that brought South Africa to the world. And so there's big political debates about which is better, but if a film can actually articulate some of those political debates, for me that is much more effective than, say, just another sort of hagiography, a biography that says Mandela was bad, then good, then amazing, and now a saint. If you can actually show that he was a human being, he was a politician, he was somebody who really existed, not a character in a film, but somebody who his exceptionalism and his exceptional nature was because he was like one of us, just a little bit better. And because of that, it's exceptional.
You mentioned the royal family was watching a screening. We have a 23-second clip of what they saw. Let's take a look.
Cheers.
The accused are responsible for acts of sabotage with the intention of overthrowing the government.
Nelson Mandela, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
My lord, it is not I but the government that should plead guilty.
You will never leave yet. You will never touch a woman or a child again. It's a pity they didn't hang you.
So it's almost guaranteed that box office-wise, this is going to get a lot of attention.
Absolutely.
What about other films about South Africa, like Invictus?
I mean, Invictus also a very interesting film because you see in the Mandela of that what his most exceptional thing he did was when he puts on the Springbok jersey, when he actually does, he learned Afrikaner's culture. He learned that element. And so it's a film about something as frivolous as a rugby World Cup, but nonetheless, you saw Mandela and you saw in the performance of Freeman something pretty amazing in this character.
Thank you very much for coming in. It's great to be in studio with you.
I love it. Thanks,
Jason,
Scott.
have a good week.
Take care.